And you said that you were trying to create a program, or there's a program in place for that, like $2 billion or something like that?
We are. We put money aside. Again, I don't know how much I want to bore you with all this and get down to the weeds on the subject matter here, but one of the major problems is liquidity. That is, there's no money out there, so people can borrow and people can lend. How do you create liquidity in the market? The Federal Reserve Bank has done something by lowering the discount window and then the Fed rate. That's helped to some degree, but you got to be careful. If you do too much of that, you can create inflation. So you got to try and balance these things. The second thing is there are what they call government-sponsored enterprises, two major ones, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are major housing initiative programs, creating wealth for the purposes of getting people in homes. They have a lot of liquidity. And I've been anxious, I've been pushing since August to get the administration to raise what they call the portfolio limits in those two government-sponsored enterprises. The administration has been reluctant to do it. That would create liquidity in the market, which would really ease up some of this problem. They're not doing it, they should be doing it. That's one of the things we're trying to get done as well.
When you're talking about the administration and then with this situation with the foreclosures, the Bush administration says the economy's great, So let's just ask this real quick question. Are we heading toward a recession?
Well, I've been careful about saying yes to that question, because I think if words have meaning, and you ought to be careful. You can create self-fulfilling prophecies here by predicting these things. We're certainly heading into an environment where that could happen here. You know, one of the things that's amazed me about this debate for the presidency here, we don't have any discussion about this subject matter. I thank you for raising these issues. Here, the next president of the United States is responsible for managing a $14 trillion economy here. We'll spend 5 minutes talking about UFOs, but not a question about how to manage the economy of the country here. Creating wealth and how it works, creating opportunity and jobs for people and the like here. So I appreciate, Chris, the question, because I think people do worry about it. Most people who got up this morning in this state were worrying about their jobs, worrying about their retirements, worrying about whether or not they get health care, they can afford it, whether or not their kids get a good education, and what their futures are going to be like. Here, it's amazing to me that in a debate for the presidency of the United States, we've had almost no conversation or discussion about the economic interests of the country. I think most people here, putting aside the question of whether or not we'll have a recession next year or not, I think all of us have a sense of unease about where this economy is going here. While all of us may be able to say, well, I'm doing okay right now, but I don't feel very secure about my future, and I feel a lot less secure about the future of my children, and what kind of an economy will be there for them as they finish their education and go out to that market, whether or not they can become independent and self-sufficient. Americans are livid over the notion that we seem to be allowing one business after another to pack up and leave, almost providing the financial incentives and inducements for them to leave the United States rather than to stay here and offer the incentives for people to create jobs in the United States. They're also angry about how we seem to be failing to deal with our trading partners with a fairness and equilibrium we'd insist upon, particularly in China. So we need to have an administration that understands these issues. I've been on my Foreign Relations Committee for 26 years. I've been on this banking committee dealing with these questions for a quarter of a century. I'm always amazed at how little people know about financial literacy in our country, particularly people who run for public office that have no idea. It's stunning to me how little they understand how capitalism works, how we create wealth and jobs and opportunity in this country. We need to have more of that. We need to have leaders that understand that and do that. That's what I bring to this candidacy as well. So I am worried about where things are going, but I also have a lot of confidence in our capabilities and our assets as a nation. The problems we face are not insignificant, but this is not the Great Depression. It's not World War II. We have a lot more going for us. What's missing is a sense of optimism and confidence that leadership actually know what they're talking about and can bring people together to make a difference and move forward.
In regard to financial security, something tells me that these folks would have a question.
They have, I'm sure they do. In fact, I love working with them here. This is AARP. I'm the only candidate, by the way, that's a member of AARP and gets mail from diaper services. I have a 6-year-old. That's a unique position to be a candidate here, as a member.
When he's talking about debates, for all of us that have watched debates, there's 3 candidates that seem to get the bulk of the time with you and your other colleagues. How do you get more airtime in debates?
A couple of things like this. I've already had about 3/4 times the time I had last week. I would say I could show up at the debate, stand there, go out and have dinner, and come back before I get the first question. So I appreciate immensely these kind of opportunities where you get a chance to make your case a little bit and talk about what you'd like to do and what you bring to this candidacy. What I said at the outset to you, and I'm not trying to just pander to an audience here, having done literally dozens and dozens of house parties across the state over the last year and a half and town hall meetings and the like, It is an act of patriotism. I brought friends from Connecticut and other places to come and just stand in the back of the room and listen to you and your fellow citizens of this state on a Wednesday night or a Sunday afternoon that we'll gather 20, 30, 40, 100 for a couple of hours to have a conversation. And it is a conversation, at least it better be, or you're not going to be well received. You not only want to hear from the candidates, you want to make sure the candidates hear from you in this process. And so I have a lot of confidence. We'll find out whether or not it's misplaced confidence, but I have a lot of confidence. And I think people, frankly, are tired that all they've heard about is 3 candidates. 2 really, and occasionally a 3rd. And they're saying, you know, a year's gone by, there are other people. If you take the so-called top 3 candidates, their collective years in public service at a level dealing with national politics are 13 years. Senator Biden, myself, and I, again, having these years, really more than a quarter of a century, working at these questions, creating change. People want change in this country, but they want to know how to do it here. This is the only job I know of where prior references are not required. You know, you wouldn't remodel your bathroom without saying, had you ever done this before I hired you?
It's kind of what you said, I just like a hammer, but I can't build a house.
So wait a minute, I'm going to have my appendix out tomorrow. So anybody who's ever done one, I'd like you to try me out. So I think we're at a point where we'd like to make sure that the people who are going to choose here, one, can win the election. And anyone who assumes that anybody can win this is wrong. And secondly, can you really bring the country together? Which is I think all of us want to see happen here. Taking our principles and making them national policies here. And if we can't do that, and you're gathered here 4 years from now, listening again to the same litany of issues, the same growing problems here, that I worry about what kind of a century this is going to be for the 6-year-old and 2-year-old that Jackie and I have as children. What kind of a country and world they're going to grow up. Grace was born 2 days after 9/11 in Arlington, Virginia. Actually due on 9/11.
No, I went into labor on that.
You went into labor on that. I don't want to get into this. There's such a thing as too much information. But so obviously, look, I mean, you look down at a child born, we know the world has just changed forever. And ask myself, because I did that day, what kind of a world are we going to create for her? And this really is about all of us. This isn't about the person just standing here. When we talk about great generations in our country, we don't just identify political leaders. We talk about generations of people who made a difference. When I was in the Peace Corps, people have asked me since those days, why did I join? Why did I go up into the Peace Corps? What was it in 1966 and 60s that caused me to do it? And the answer I've given for 40 years is the same one over and over again. An American president asked me to. He asked a generation of us to be involved in things larger than ourselves. And it was an exciting time to be in America. We didn't solve every problem, but people often did different things. They went to the military, to VISTA, the civil rights movement, the farm workers movement, got involved in their own communities. But you had a sense we all belonged to one country, trying to head in the right direction, the common direction. And you compare that, if you will, to this administration's call for us to go shopping in the wake of 9/11. What had happened to leadership in the country, where we went from people who invited us, all of us, not just Democrats or those who voted for me or others, but invited the whole country to feel optimistic and confident about ourselves and to get working on the things that matter to our people in this country and the world. And we did so. And so things like the Peace Corps, and things like VISTA, and things like